Roseline barely had time to step through the front door before she realized something was wrong. Her university envelope was already open. The thick cream-colored packet that had arrived that afternoon lay on the kitchen counter, its contents spread out as if someone had been inspecting them. Across the room, her father stood beside the small office shredder he used for old bills. Her mother folded her arms and watched Roseline with an expression that held no excitement at all. "I wanted to open that myself," Roseline said, hurrying toward the counter. Her mother lifted the congratulatory letter before Roseline could reach it. "Full academic scholarship," Diane read aloud. "Tuition, housing, meal plan." She lowered the page and looked at Roseline. "Well, that settles it." Roseline smiled uncertainly. "It does. I worked so hard for this." Her mother slowly shook her head. "No, Roseline. It settles that we don't need to spend money on you." Roseline frowned. "I don't understand." "You earned a full scholarship," Diane replied evenly, "which means every dollar we saved for college can go where it's actually needed." Roseline stared at her. "My sister." "Exactly." Her younger sister, Emma, looked up from the dining table, startled. "Mom, I never asked." "This isn't your decision," Diane interrupted. Roseline turned toward her father. "Dad." Mark picked up the enrollment packet. "You'll stay here after graduation." Roseline laughed nervously. "That's not funny." "I'm not joking." He walked toward the shredder. For a heartbeat, Roseline couldn't move. Then she saw him slide the first page into the machine. "Dad." The motor roared to life. Thin strips of paper curled into the waste bin. Roseline lunged forward. "Please, those are my acceptance papers." Mark held out one arm, stopping her before she reached the desk. "You don't need them." "I earned those. And your sister needs us more." Another packet disappeared into the blades. Housing confirmation. Orientation schedule. Scholarship agreement. Each page vanished before Roseline could grab it. Tears blurred her vision. "You can't do this." "We already did," Diane answered. "You have a scholarship. That's enough. Get a job after graduation, help around the house, and let your sister have the opportunities she won't get on her own." Emma stood from her chair. "Mom, stop. She worked for years." "I said enough." The room fell silent, except for the steady hum of the shredder. When the last sheet disappeared, Mark emptied the basket into a trash bag and tied it shut. "There," he said, "no more college talk." Roseline looked from one parent to the other, waiting for someone to admit it had been a terrible joke. No one did. Without another word, she picked up her backpack and walked out the front door. The weeks that followed passed in a blur she never expected to live through. Graduation came. Her classmates celebrated acceptance letters, dorm assignments, and plans for the fall. Group chats filled with photographs of campus visits and shopping trips for college supplies. Roseline muted every conversation. Instead of preparing for orientation, she accepted a full-time job at a neighborhood grocery store. Every morning she stocked shelves. Every afternoon, she worked the register. Every evening she came home exhausted, careful not to mention the university whose banners still hung folded inside her bedroom closet. The hardest moments weren't at work. They were the questions. "So, which campus are you heading to? When do classes start?" She learned to smile politely. "My plans changed." No one asked twice. Her guidance counselor tried several times to reach her parents, insisting there might still be options if the university was contacted quickly. Each time, her parents refused the conversation. "They've made their decision," her father finally told the school. Roseline only learned that much because her counselor quietly mentioned it during one last meeting. Before she left, the counselor hesitated. "You know," she said softly, "someone else has been asking about you." Roseline looked up. "Who?" The counselor smiled apologetically. I'm afraid I can't say. That mystery lingered in Roseline's mind for months. Then Easter arrived. For the first time since graduation, everyone gathered around the dining table, pretending nothing unusual had ever happened. Her parents chatted with relatives. Emma helped serve dinner. Roseline answered questions with careful, polite sentences and kept her attention on her plate. Halfway through the meal, the house phone rang. Mark wiped his hands with a napkin and stood. "I'll get it." No one paid much attention until they heard him say, "Hello." A pause. "Yes, this is Mark Carter." Another pause. His posture stiffened. The color slowly drained from his face. Across the table, Deanne frowned. "What is it?" Mark didn't answer. He swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" His eyes slowly lifted toward Roseline. "Is my daughter." Silence spread across the dining room. Then the voice on the other end said something that made him grip the phone tighter. Mark looked directly at Roseline. "They want to speak with you." Roseline didn't move. For several seconds, everyone at the table simply stared at Mark as he held the phone halfway between himself and her. "No," he said into the receiver. "I'm her father. Whatever this is, you can tell me." A calm voice answered, loud enough that Roseline could hear only a faint murmur. Mark's expression tightened. "I understand," he muttered. Another pause. "No, she's here." His fingers loosened round the receiver. "The attorney says he can only discuss the matter with you," he said reluctantly, extending the phone toward Roseline. Her mother stood immediately. "That's ridiculous. She's 18. "The instructions are very clear," the voice said through the receiver. "Please hand the phone to Miss Roseline Carter." Roseline accepted the phone with trembling hands. "This is Roseline." "Good evening, Miss Carter. My name is Andrew Collins. I'm your grandfather's attorney. I apologize for contacting you during dinner, but I needed to confirm something personally." "My grandfather," she asked. Is he all right?" "I'm not calling because of an emergency. Before we schedule tomorrow's meeting, I have one important question." Roseline glanced uneasily at her parents, who were trying to listen without appearing obvious. "Have you remained financially independent since October?" The question caught her completely off guard. She blinked. Yes. "You have supported yourself through employment?" "Yes." "You have not accepted financial assistance from your parents?" "No." There was a brief pause before the attorney spoke again. "Thank you. That information is important. I'd like you to come to my office tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. "My office?" "Yes." Her mother stepped closer, trying to hear every word. Roseline lowered her voice. "Can you tell me what this is about?" "I'm afraid I cannot discuss the details over the telephone." "Is it about Grandpa?" "It concerns instructions he left for me to carry out." Roseline's heart skipped. "But I'll explain everything tomorrow." The line disconnected. She slowly lowered the receiver. Every pair of eyes in the room settled on her. "Well," her father demanded. "He wants to meet tomorrow morning." And he wouldn't explain why. Deanne folded her arms. "We're coming with you." Roseline hesitated. "He asked for me." "You're still our daughter," Diane replied sharply. "If this has anything to do with your grandfather, we'll be there." No one argued after that. Dinner ended awkwardly, with conversation reduced to short, empty sentences. That night, Roseline barely slept. Instead, memories she had tried to bury returned one after another. She remembered watching her classmates celebrate acceptance letters while she quietly filled out an application for the grocery store. She remembered unloading delivery trucks before sunrise because full-time employees earned slightly higher wages. She remembered pretending she was happy for friends posting photographs from their dorm rooms, even though each picture reminded her of the future she'd lost. Most of all, she remembered blaming herself. If only she'd gotten home sooner. If only she'd hidden the mail. If only she'd fought harder. The next morning, before leaving for work one final time, her guidance counselor had stopped her in the school parking lot. "I wish things had turned out differently," Mrs. Harris had said. "They didn't." "No." The counselor hesitated. "Your parents refused every meeting I requested." Roseline nodded silently. "I know." Mrs. Harris looked as though she wanted to say more. Finally she did. "You should know. Someone kept asking how you were doing." Roseline frowned. "Who?" "I'm sorry." The counselor smiled gently. "I promised I wouldn't tell you." At the time, Roseline had assumed it was simply another teacher. Now, with Grandpa's attorney suddenly calling after 6 months of silence, that conversation returned with new meaning. The drive to the attorney's office the next morning felt longer than it really was. Her father gripped the steering wheel without speaking. Her mother stared out the window. Roseline sat in the back seat, wondering why one simple question kept echoing in her mind. Why had the attorney cared so much whether she had been supporting herself? Roseline followed her parents through the glass doors of the downtown law office, clutching the appointment card the attorney had given her over the phone. The receptionist looked up with a professional smile. "Good morning, Miss Roseline Carter." "Yes." "We've been expecting you." Before Roseline could answer, her father stepped forward. "We're here for the meeting." The receptionist checked her computer. "I have an appointment for Miss Carter." "We're her parents," Diane said. "We'll be joining her." "I'm sorry." The receptionist remained polite. "Mr. Collins left specific instructions." She picked up the phone on her desk. "One moment, please." A minute later, a man in his 60s wearing a charcoal suit entered the reception area carrying a leather folder. "Miss Carter," he asked. Roseline stood. "I'm Andrew Collins." He offered her a warm handshake before turning toward her parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter." Mark nodded stiffly. "We'll all go in together." "I'm afraid that won't be possible." Diane frowned. "What do you mean?" "The meeting is confidential." "We're her parents." "I understand." Andrew spoke calmly, never raising his voice. "However, your father-in-law left written legal instructions requiring that my initial meeting be held with Miss Carter alone." "My father would never do that," Mark replied. Without arguing, Andrew opened the folder and removed a notarized document. He anticipated that concern. He turned the page, so only the relevant paragraph was visible. "No relative, including my son and daughter-in-law, is to attend the first conference. My attorney shall speak first with my granddaughter, Roseline Carter, in private." Silence settled over the reception desk. Other visitors waiting nearby glanced over before quickly looking away again. "This is absurd," Diane said. Andrew remained composed. "My responsibility is to honor my client's instructions." Mark folded his arms. "You can't keep us out." "I can." The attorney gestured toward the framed certificates lining the wall. "Those instructions are legally binding." For the first time since arriving, Mark had no immediate response. Andrew looked back at Roseline. "If you're ready." She hesitated only briefly before following him down the hallway. Behind her, she heard her mother's voice. "Roseline, don't sign anything until we see it." Andrew closed the conference room door softly. The sudden quiet felt almost unreal. Instead of immediately discussing legal documents, he pulled a storage box from a cabinet and placed it on the table. "I think these belong to you." Roseline looked inside. Her breath caught. Every certificate she'd earned since middle school had been carefully preserved. Science fair medals, debate competition ribbons, honor roll certificates, even the essay that had won first place in the state writing contest. I thought these were gone." Your grandfather asked your school counselor for copies whenever possible. Andrew smiled gently. He said you had a habit of underestimating yourself. Roseline carefully picked up one of the certificates. He kept all of these. For years. Andrew opened another folder. Inside were photographs. Roseline receiving an academic award. Roseline presenting at a science competition. Roseline standing beside the principal after earning valedictorian honors. He couldn't attend every event, Andrew explained, but he always asked someone to send him updates. Tears welled in Roseline's eyes. I never knew. He wanted it that way. Andrew slid several letters across the table. They're from your principal and your guidance counselor. Roseline recognized Mrs. Harris's handwriting immediately. The counselor wrote to Grandpa. With your grandfather's permission, she kept him informed about your academic progress. Andrew paused before continuing. She also informed him about something else. Roseline slowly looked up. My scholarship. He nodded once. She called him within days of learning that your scholarship documents had been intentionally destroyed. The room became very still. Roseline lowered her eyes. I thought nobody knew. Your grandfather knew. Andrew's expression grew more serious. And after learning what happened, he instructed me to begin revising several important legal documents. Roseline's heartbeat quickened. What kind of documents? I'm not authorized to answer that today. Before she could ask another question, Andrew reached into his briefcase and removed a thick sealed envelope. Across the front, written in Grandpa's unmistakable handwriting, were the words, "Open only in the presence of the entire family." Andrew placed it carefully on the table between them. This, he said quietly, will be opened at the family meeting this Easter weekend. Roseline stared at the envelope. Whatever was inside had been important enough for Grandpa to change his legal plans after learning about her scholarship. Outside the conference room, she could hear the muffled voices of her parents still waiting. For the first time since her scholarship had been destroyed, they sounded uncertain. Roseline took a slow breath before stepping into her grandfather's living room. Nearly every member of the Carter family had arrived. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends filled the chairs that had been arranged in neat rows. Conversations faded as Andrew Collins carried the sealed envelope to the front of the room and placed it beside a stack of legal documents. No one seemed comfortable. Not even Mark. He had spent the drive insisting there had to be some misunderstanding, but now he avoided looking at anyone. Before the meeting officially began, Diane quietly pulled Roseline aside into the hallway. Whatever your grandfather wrote, she said in a lowered voice, remember that family comes first. Roseline looked at her without answering. Diane continued. Don't let lawyers turn you against us. I'm not the one who destroyed my future. Her mother's expression hardened. We did what was best for everyone. For Emma, Roseline corrected. No, Diane replied, for this family. Roseline stepped around her and walked back into the room before the conversation could continue. As she took her seat, Emma quietly moved into the chair beside her. I need to tell you something. Roseline turned toward her younger sister. Emma's hands trembled in her lap. I never wanted what happened. I know. No, you don't. Emma swallowed. I found out a few weeks after Dad shredded your papers. Roseline frowned. I asked them why they did it. And they said you were the responsible one. Emma's voice cracked. They kept saying I'd never get a scholarship like yours, so your future had to be sacrificed to protect mine. Roseline stared at her. I told them I didn't want that. Emma wiped away a tear. They said I didn't have a choice either. For the first time, Roseline realized Emma had not benefited from the decision the way everyone assumed. She had simply become the excuse. Before either sister could say more, Andrew stood. Thank you all for coming. The room fell silent. He opened a leather folder. As requested by Mr. William Carter, I will begin by reading a personal statement he prepared. Every eye turned toward him. Andrew adjusted his glasses. Throughout my life, he read, I believed fairness was the greatest gift a parent could give a child. The room remained perfectly still. Unfortunately, over the past several years, I have watched fairness disappear from my own family. Mark shifted uncomfortably. Andrew continued. Grandpa described birthdays where one granddaughter's accomplishments went unnoticed, while the other's mistakes were excused. He described school ceremonies Roseline attended alone because her parents had chosen another event instead. He described holiday dinners where conversations about Roseline's awards lasted only moments before being dismissed. Several relatives exchanged uneasy glances. An aunt slowly lowered her eyes. An uncle quietly leaned back in his chair. No one interrupted. Then Andrew reached the section everyone had been dreading. When I learned that Roseline's scholarship documents had been deliberately destroyed, he read, I understood that this was no longer favoritism. It was the deliberate destruction of one child's future for the convenience of another. A collective gasp spread across the room. What? One cousin whispered. Another relative looked directly at Mark. You actually did that. Mark stood abruptly. Father didn't understand the situation. Andrew didn't even look up. He anticipated interruptions. He calmly continued reading. Success does not qualify a person to lead a family. Character does. Mark opened his mouth again. Andrew raised one hand. Please, there is very little remaining. The room became silent once more. Andrew reached the final page before the sealed envelope. He carefully closed the folder and rested his hand on it. His eyes settled on Mark. Mr. Carter, he said quietly, everything you believed about your family's future changes with the next page. No one spoke. The silence in the room seemed to stretch as Andrew Collins broke the seal on the envelope and unfolded the final document. He looked around the room before beginning. Your grandfather wanted every member of the family present for this section because he believed the reasons behind his decision mattered just as much as the decision itself. He turned to the first page. Several months before leaving for medical treatment overseas, Mr. William Carter established the Carter Educational Trust. Roseline frowned. She had never heard those words before. Andrew continued. The trust was created to support students who demonstrate exceptional determination, despite financial or personal hardship. A few relatives smiled faintly. It sounded exactly like something Grandpa would have done. Then Andrew looked directly at Roseline. The trust's first beneficiary is Miss Roseline Carter. She blinked. I'm the beneficiary. Yes. Andrew nodded. After learning what happened to your scholarship, your grandfather immediately instructed me to contact your university. Mark leaned forward. What? The university was provided with sworn statements from your school counselor and supporting documentation explaining why Miss Carter never completed her enrollment. Roseline felt her heart pounding. Andrew continued. Because the scholarship had been earned on academic merit, and the university determined that the failure to enroll resulted from extraordinary family interference rather than the student's choice, her scholarship was reinstated. Roseline covered her mouth. The opportunity she had believed was gone forever had never truly disappeared. Andrew smiled gently. Your grandfather wanted you to discover that today. Tears rolled down Roseline's cheeks. For 6 months, she had believed every early morning at the grocery store. Every painful conversation with former classmates and every dream she had quietly buried had marked the end of her future. Instead, someone had been fighting for that future without asking for recognition. Andrew picked up another document. There is one final matter. Mark straightened in his chair. This concerns my father's company. It does. Andrew unfolded the next page. Mr. Carter transferred voting control of Carter Investment Holdings into the Carter Educational Trust. The room filled with surprised murmurs. Mark's face lost all color. That's impossible. It has already been executed. You can't just hand a company to an 18-year-old. Andrew calmly slid the signed paperwork across the table. Your father anticipated that concern as well. He read aloud. Leadership belongs to the person who protects opportunity, not the person who destroys it. Andrew looked toward Roseline. You will not manage the company alone. He explained that an experienced board of professional trustees would oversee daily operations until she completed her education. When she graduated, she would become chair of the trust that controlled the company's voting shares. Her responsibility would not simply be to preserve the business. It would be to ensure the educational foundation continued helping students whose opportunities were threatened by circumstances beyond their control. The room remained silent. Then Emma stood. She walked across the room and stopped in front of Roseline. I'm sorry. Roseline looked up. I should have spoken sooner. You were a kid too, Roseline said quietly. Emma shook her head. I still should have tried. The sisters embraced. Across the room, Diane lowered her eyes. She started to speak, but no words came. Several relatives who had accepted years of unequal treatment, without questioning it, quietly apologized to Roseline. One aunt admitted she had assumed Roseline simply preferred handling everything herself. An uncle confessed he had never imagined the favoritism had gone so far. Mark finally looked at Andrew. We're challenging this. You are free to seek legal advice, Andrew replied evenly. However, your father spent months documenting his decisions. Every amendment was properly witnessed, reviewed, and executed. There was nothing more to argue. For the first time in years, authority had shifted away from Roseline's parents. Months later, Roseline walked through the university gates carrying the same scholarship she had once watched disappear into a shredder. The trust paid only the expenses her scholarship did not cover. She insisted on earning everything else through hard work, just as she always had. During school breaks, she attended board meetings for the Educational Foundation, helping create scholarships for students whose education had been interrupted by family crises, illness, or financial hardship. Emma enrolled at a community college after earning a scholarship of her own. Their relationship slowly healed because it was finally built on honesty instead of comparison. As for Diane and Mark, they received the modest inheritances Grandpa had assigned to them, but they never regained control of the family business or the trust. The reputation they had carefully protected within the family changed permanently once everyone understood why Grandpa had rewritten his estate. Before leaving for her second semester, Roseline visited Grandpa's favorite park. Andrew had given her one last handwritten note that Grandpa had asked him to deliver only after everything was settled. It read, "Never confuse someone's power over you with their right to decide your future." Roseline folded the note carefully and slipped it into the front pocket of her backpack beside her restored university acceptance letter. Then she stood, looked toward the campus waiting beyond the trees, and walked forward knowing the future her parents had tried to destroy had become the very reason her grandfather trusted her to build a better one.